Good afternoon, or good morning, depending on your time zone. My name is Doug Hansen, and I'm president of the Icelandic National League of the United States. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our presentation today. This webinar is part of an ongoing series presented jointly by the INLUS and our Canadian counterpart, the INLNA. Our goal is to provide quality content of interest to the Icelandic community in North America and beyond. We thank all of our members and donors who make this type of offering possible. Now let's get on with the show. I would like to welcome Mark Peterson and Diane Okonski, who will be hosting and moderating our program. Mark is the Vice President of the INLNA and will introduce our guest. Go ahead, Mark.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Peterson, the Vice President of the Icelandic National League of North America, and we're so happy to be doing this joint presentation with the INLUS and Eliza Reid. But first, out of a deep respect for our Indigenous peoples of North America, we will begin with a land acknowledgement. If you know the names of the Indigenous peoples where you are, the invitation is to bring them to mind. Many Indigenous, Native American, and Métis people helped our ancestors during the early years of settlement. And today we affirm our commitment to truth and reconciliation and working to ensure North America is a safe and free place for all who come to live, work, and share stories on these great lands. And I think it's supposed to hand off to Diane now, no?
Well, thank you, Mark and Doug. Hello, I'm Diane Okonski with the INLUS, and I also want to join them in welcoming you to our program today, and a special welcome to our guest, Eliza Reid. Before we get started, I just have two things to remind you of. The first is that the program is being recorded and will be available on the inlus.org website. Second, we really welcome your questions. So please use the Q&A button on Zoom to submit your questions. We will ask as many as possible at the end of the interview. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. So Mark, I'm just going to turn the program over to you to introduce Eliza and to conduct the main interview.
Thank you, Dan. We are very pleased to welcome Eliza Reid. She's joining us online from Iceland, and she's an established author who's originally from Canada. It's not surprising that an author would find Iceland an attractive place to go and set up shop. She's been a freelance writer for several Icelandic publications, including the Reykjavik Grapevine, Icelandic Review. Among her many roles over the years, she's also served as the United Nations Special Ambassador for Tourism and Sustainable Development Goals. In 2014, she co-founded the Iceland Writers Retreat, which connects aspiring writers from around the world with Iceland's rich literary culture and offers small group workshops on the craft of writing. She's also a former First Lady of Iceland. She met her husband while at school in Oxford, and he was later elected the President of Iceland. A few years back, Eliza published her first nonfiction book, Secrets of the Sprakar, Iceland's Extraordinary Women and How They Are Changing the World. It became a national bestseller in Canada and was editor's pick for the New York Times Book Review. It has been translated into several languages. Eliza's interests in diplomacy, sustainable tourism, and gender equality have now expanded to include murder mystery writing. We're here today to talk with Eliza about her latest book, Death on an Island, which is her debut into a whole new genre of literature. Welcome, Eliza. My first question, you can take it away.
I just wanted to say thank you. That's all I wanted to say for now.
No
so
problem.
You can hop in at very kind words and pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Just to let you know, you can jump in and interrupt me anytime.
Okay.
My
No
first
pressure.
question is, you wrote an amazing nonfiction book. What inspired you to move into the fiction world and write this fictional novel?
Good question. And thank you. And I know I can't see any of the names or anything of the people who have logged in, but I suspect I've met maybe quite a few of you over the years. And just want to add that it's always a pleasure for me to take part in anything that is continuing to strengthen the already very strong friendship between North America and Iceland, especially in this 150th anniversary year of New Iceland. So it's great to be here. Um, yeah, as you say, I wrote this first book, Secrets of the Sprakkar, during the pandemic in 2021. And I sometimes I'm asked this question, and I always think I don't give maybe a very properly marketing answer, but it's the honest answer. And the honest answer is that when I finished my nonfiction book, when I handed in the first draft in, I guess it must have been the summer of 2021 in the middle of the pandemic. And that was the first book I'd written. And I thought, well, I can't say that I really like writing, but I like the sort of writing process and the feeling after having finished it. And I was really excited about launching the book. And I thought, I'd like to do this again sometime. And if I don't start right away, I'll probably never do it because, we all have busy lives and it's very easy to postpone things, especially I'll say writing a novel because it's very hard to know if it will ever come to anything. So the short answer was what inspired me was it was almost a professional challenge. Was that I thought, okay, I've written a nonfiction book now. I'll try to write a novel, but really, if I was ever going to write a fiction, it was going to be a murder mystery because that's probably the fiction genre that I enjoy the most. And they always say to write what you know or write something interesting. And of course, I wanted to write a book that I would enjoy reading. So it was no question about writing a murder mystery. And really, then again, they say write what you know. I don't know murder, but I do know Iceland, and I do know Iceland. As someone who was born and raised abroad and only moved to the country as an adult. So I thought, well, I'll write a story that's going to be set in Iceland and I'll have some of the characters be these people who are in my case, they're Canadian characters who are living in Iceland, and that's sort of what started it all off. So it took a little while to get the wheels working to write it, but then I got it done.
Cool, thank you. So the book has been described like a little bit of Agatha Christie, Louis Penny, and Nordic noir. How would you describe your novel?
Well, I think it's very flattering when people say that, as you say, Agatha Christie meets Nordic noir, because to me, Agatha Christie is kind of one of the what would my kids call it? The goat. I guess the goat is only one thing, the greatest of all time. But she's obviously one of the top writers. Louise Penny is one of the top writers today. But I did want to create that mix where you're in a Nordic setting in Iceland, and we all know this Nordic noir genre that incorporates the landscape and the environment as almost a character in the book. But I would say that the style of my mystery is a little bit more, it's not quite as gloomy and depressing. So there's no alcoholic police officers, there's no pets who are murdered. It's not a horror, it's not super gory. So in all of these many, many subgenres of murder mystery, I would call it kind of a classic slash golden age sort of British style murder mystery. So it's not quite a cozy mystery, but it's a classic closed room sort of that you meet everybody at the beginning of the novel at a restaurant on the Westman Islands, Vestmannaeyjar, and those are the people, those are our suspects for the murder mystery. So I'm not going to give you any spoilers in this event, but I will say that the murder isn't like an alien that drops in on page 200 or something. In theory, you should have a chance from the beginning to be able to figure out who done it. Although, of course, I hope that people don't figure out who done it. And the premise, in a nutshell, I guess we'll get to that, is that it's the Canadian ambassador to Iceland and his wife who are on one of these official visits. We can talk about that kind of thing in more detail later, to the Western Islands off the south coast of Iceland. They are there. He is there, the ambassador, to open an art exhibition by Canadian artists who used to live on the islands, but also to try to woo some businesses to come and invest in Canada, to have a discussion with the mayor and do all of this. And at the end of the evening, the book really opens at a dinner that is hosted by the mayor in honor of this visiting delegation. And after dinner, there is a toast, and the deputy ambassador falls down dead. so that's kind of the cast of characters who are there, including a couple of the other visitors and owner of the restaurant. So that's the setup.
Nice. It was interesting. The INLNA Reads book club that discussed this thing. They talked about, you mentioned about how you should be able to figure out who done it. They talked about the fact the way that you twisted and worked the characters and stuff, it was difficult for them to ever figure out who done it, but that was an intriguing part of the way you wrote the book. Evidently, it was they loved that. So the in this book, of course, you wrote the previous book, the nonfiction story. Did you bring anything from that story in your development of the women in this book, or even
Mm,
just in the development of the book at
yeah.
all?
I don't know that from that book particularly, but certainly, I guess my own character voice. I mean, it's a strange, eh, it's sort of impossible not to write in one's own voice, but I suppose for fiction, you're not really supposed to, the characters shouldn't have my voice. But I know that I've had a few friends who said, "Oh, yes, I can tell that you wrote this book," and I've said, "Oh, really? Hopefully not too much." And of course, it's all fictionalized. All the characters are made up and the circumstances, but inevitably, there's just different approaches to things that come out. And I suppose as a feminist, I wanted to create a mystery where the women, weren't very two-dimensional, but I also wanted to explore this idea of how we put people in boxes anyway. So I wanted to, when I served as first lady of Iceland, which was just such a fun adventure and an incredible opportunity. It was also very interesting in the fact that that happened so quickly that I was kind of thrust on the national stage and was all of a sudden identified primarily as somebody's wife. And even though I'm very proud to be my husband's wife, I wouldn't say it is my defining characteristic as a human being. And so I wanted to kind of explore that idea because I think many people can understand the idea of what it's like to have a partner who is perhaps better known than they are for whatever reason, and how you can kind of exploit that in some ways, right? That people maybe underestimate you or different things. So I thought it fit well with a murder mystery, and so I hope that I hope that especially the women are kind of slightly different characters than you think that they might be.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I can imagine that you used your experience and to mold it that way. It's brilliant. Uh, so did the characters that you did write and the
Mhm.
both the men and the women, were they fully formed before you started writing, or did you modify them as the story was going along?
That's a good question. I definitely modified them as the story was going along. I started with some of them. I started, I guess, with the roles more. I thought, okay, I'm going to have Canadian ambassador. I'm going to have his wife. She is going to be the main heroine. I thought, there's going to be a mayor. There will be like I picked sort of roles, and then I tried to add characteristics to them, the types of people and how their personalities might play off each other, how they might generate conflicts with each other. Um, and then sometimes characters end up a little bit more interesting or less interesting or different than you think. And of course, I don't want to give anything away. Um, but I'm just trying to think of a couple of examples. Piotr, who is the chef and the owner of the restaurant here, he, I thought, ended up kind of funny. Like I didn't necessarily think he's a bit of comedic relief, I find in the book, but he's one of my favorite characters actually. And I thought he was interesting to write. Another character that ended up really popular with my editors, and I believe with readers too, is the police officer, Jonas Jonasson. And he is a good example of someone who I didn't really flesh out at all at the beginning. I just got to this point in the book where I needed a police officer. And really, I started writing him without really thinking about him at all. I mean, of course, that's why we have an editing process in the book. So hopefully, he's much better fleshed out in the final edition. But as I wrote him, Yeah, and the first draft, my editor said, "Oh, we really like him. Let's try to bring out different dimensions." And in fact, he's been popular enough that I'm writing the sequel now, and he returns in the sequel. So he's gonna come back in this one. So it was more, yeah, starting with the roles and then developing the characters. And none of the people is based on anybody that I know. Although it's amazing to me as a first time writer how many people do come up to me and say, "Oh, the character, Ben, I know exactly who you're talking about when you talk about him." And I think, no, I made him up. I'm not thinking about anybody. Um, so that's kind of funny, but that it is also kind of an ode. It's an ode both to Iceland, but also to the public service a little bit. And I witnessed, as you said, some of it draws on my own experience in the sense that we traveled on many official visits around many parts of Iceland, and then you have this very fixed schedule and you see lots of different things. But I also saw the work that diplomats do when we went abroad on state visits, when we returned on visits, when there was international guests of any sort, and I thought it would be really interesting to explore that a little bit because I think it's sometimes a misunderstood profession, and so I thought that it would be interesting to shed light on what's going on there.
So somewhere in the world, there is a diplomat who's sitting there reading the book and thinking, she meant me. I'm the one that
I
died.
I have to say, well, this is the plus side is that the Canadian embassy in Iceland is so small that there is no deputy ambassador. So nobody will feel like that I murdered that role. But there's a few former Canadian and current Canadian ambassadors who've read the manuscript.
I love it. Here's just a fun question. So when the movie comes out,
Mhm.
who do you want to have play the role of Jane? Or are you going to take it on?
Oh, so no. So yeah, I optioned the rights actually more to do a TV series rather than a movie. So the idea would be that this book would turn into probably a six-part TV, like first season of a series, and then the next book, if it was successful, would be another series, etc. And anybody who's been connected to TV or movie making knows that it's a sort of glacial process how this works. I do know that the Canadian production company and an Icelandic production company have signed an agreement, which is good to have a co-production. Um, and I don't know. I do have an Icelandic actor in mind who I think will be great for the police officer, but I don't know enough about the Canadian to know. And maybe it should be somebody who's like 35 now, because by the time they film it, that person would be old enough to play the person. I don't know. We'll have to see. And I mean, I also try not to think about it too much because I don't really have that. I suppose I can throw my ideas in, but once you sell the rights, you kind of give up the option to actually control it. But my kids certainly think it's way cooler to have sold TV rights than to have written a book. So if it happens and they're all filming it, then I'll get taken on set, I guess, to show them around a bit.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. How old will
Yeah.
they be?
Yeah, exactly. If they're not all left home or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll be taking you on the set. Yeah.
That's right.
The So if you look back at your writing career, which is in its infancy, I hope, because
Mhm.
there's lots more to come,
I
uh,
hope so.
and your other roles that you've had so far, what's the favorite thing you've done so far in your relatively young life? So is it writing or is it being a
Oh, what a
diplomat
great
or
question. No one's asked me this. I think one of the things that I'm most grateful for in my life and, in my professional life, especially, is the variety that I've had. I love the fact that I get to wear a lot of different hats, which means that I don't get bored so much. So I've been doing, as you said, a lot of writing. Now I've written both fiction and nonfiction. Uh, uh, I can talk more later about what other books might be coming up. But I also run a writers retreat every year called the Iceland Writers Retreat. I know that the Icelandic community in North America has always helped us talk about that event and has had many people participate before. So that involves kind of the organization and planning, which maybe doesn't sound very exciting, but I really like to do. I do a lot of public speaking still nowadays. I was thinking, earlier I should have had a copy of my book to hold up, and I do have them behind there. But sitting on my desk right now is a Slovak copy of Secrets of the Sprekar, because I'm going to Bratislava in Slovakia in a couple of weeks to speak at the Forbes Women's Summit there about gender equality. So I'm still doing a lot of speeches like that. And then I'm on the board of the Icelandic Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I, do various speeches and events in Iceland. So I love that I don't have to put myself in one professional box either. And and I still have the opportunity to get to, stay involved in lots of different things and try to connect people and meet with people. And that's what I like to do.
In writing this mystery, jumping back to your book, uh, what's the most fun fact or surprise that you had when you were writing the book? Like, what is it that would, I have never tried to write a book, so I have no idea what stumbles I
I
could hit.
never say never, Mark, is all I'm going to tell you. But
okay, I've never written a book yet.
yeah. Uh, Stumbles or surprises? Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I started in Iceland in the sense that I thought, okay, I can explain some of the Icelandic things, and I knew things about, say, for instance, the volcanic eruption on the Westman Islands in 1973 that I talk a lot about. Um, I enjoyed writing about the food. Food is something that I find interesting, thank goodness, because we have to eat a lot every day. And the restaurant where the dinner happens is called Skell in the book, and it's quite loosely based on a real restaurant on the Western Islands, which actually closed after 12 years this year. Not because it wasn't popular; it was incredibly popular, but just because the chefs wanted to do something new. And I know the owner and chef of that restaurant, who is also, again, nothing like the chef in the book. But he published a cookbook once, and he generously allowed me to kind of crib a lot of the food dish titles from his cookbook and amend some. And it was fun to research, for plot purposes, the time of year, like what kind of herbs are growing on the island at that time of year, and what are their properties, and what will they do. Conversely, there is poison involved in the book, and I think I'll never write another book with poison again, because it's very complicated. I've just I've decided. So the next death, someone's just going to fall from a great height. I feel like that's easier. So that's one of the things you learn when writing murder mystery. Sometimes you fall into these traps that you're like, oh yeah, no, that's more complicated than I thought it would be. But live and learn.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, so you're actually almost like living in the book as you're writing the book, and you don't know what's going to come next. But I could
A
imagine.
little bit, yeah. I mean, I plotted. I thought of the big premise. I thought about how I wanted it to end, probably. But sometimes getting from A to Z like that is more complicated than you think. And the hard parts, and I've been finding that again, the second one is those moments where there's going to be the sort of penny drops for the characters, but not for the reader. And you need to obviously have these events happen that the reader will read. But not in a way that they'll clue in to how significant they are, but they'll have to be significant for the characters, and that's kind of the hardest part that I find.
So you have alluded to the fact that you're going to be bringing back Jane and Jonas, and as well as possibly other genres or nonfiction books. But
Mhm.
right at this moment, is there any kind of a teaser you can give the audience listening now or next
Yeah,
on?
I can give you two actually. So one is that murder mystery, which is the same characters. It's the second book in the series. It's not all the same characters, of course, but it's Jane again and her family. It will take place in Reykjavik and will again involve a group of locals and a group of Icelanders. It's sort of centered around the fact that Jane will join a choir because choirs are very popular in Iceland, and they're a great way to gather all different kinds of age groups and people and backgrounds together. And our police officer Jonas, he is, they liked him so much after the last case that he's been transferred to Reykjavik, so he's there as well. But I'm hoping for lots of different tensions. So I don't I don't think that one will actually come out until 2027. We will see, and that is because I do have another book that is coming out in May next year, which I haven't talked about too much, but I even have like a printout of it here. So it's farther along, and it is a memoir of my time as First Lady, and it's called The First Lady Next Door. And the subtitle is The First Lady Next Door, a memoir of Iceland, identity, and unexpected adventure. So it's coming out in May. I just haven't sort of been publicizing it yet too much, but as you can see, this is my first real copy that I've got, and it doesn't even have a cover yet. But there's some photos and stuff in it. So I'm really excited to introduce that to people next spring.
What was more enjoyable, writing the fiction or writing the memoir?
I think they're both enjoyable in their own way. The nonfiction I find easier, which is kind of the reverse to what I thought, because I thought, when I was writing Secrets of the Sprocker and interviewing people, and you'd kind of really want someone to say X, but if they haven't said X, you can't put it in. But with a mystery, you think, oh, great, I can make them do whatever I want. But I think it's because like you have no barriers or parameters then that you have to kind of trust your instincts. Is this believable? Is this not believable? Is this too complicated? Is it not complicated enough? So it's a different challenge in that sense because you have kind of no barriers. The memoir, in some senses, was easy to write because it's my own life. So I remember that. The challenge is that I guess one, of course, memory is fallible, right? So you do your best to remember things. People remember things differently, but also that a memoir is different from an autobiography, right? So, and maybe this seems logical, but as I was thinking of when I wrote it, it doesn't mean that I write. First of all, memoir also sounds kind of highfalutin, as you said, considering how young I am. But that's the thing they put on the book. But that doesn't mean I write the A to Z of my life. It means that I talk about a specific aspect, and in this case, it's speaking about my time as First Lady, which was of course unexpected, and the message being that we want to all make the most of unexpected moments in life. And so all of the earlier things, I do have a lot from my childhood, and what it was like to move to Iceland and learn about Icelandic society and contribute here. But you only put the things in that are salient to the later points. So that to me has been kind of fun to think. I have like 2 pages on going to high school, and high school is kind of fun times, and none of the major things that I really remember from high school are in there because they're not relevant to later on. And then you pick out a couple of other things. So it was also a fun process writing that.
And you could probably write a whole nother book just on high school.
Yeah,
But
I don't think anybody would want to read that, maybe, but me and my friends.
we would probably all align with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fascinating process. Are there any other than murder mystery? Is there any other type of fictional genre you would want to get into?
Um,
Space
there isn't.
aliens over Westman.
Yeah, exactly. Probably no spell. There's nothing yet, but I also never thought I'd write anything. So I definitely think never say never. And I'm enjoying these characters and getting to know the characters in this murder mystery. I finished the first draft of the second murder mystery, so now I'm kind of, as I am making edits to the second mystery, I'm also kind of tinkering with how I want to do a third mystery. So I feel like there's still more to say in this series now. Um, doesn't mean I won't wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, I'm going to write this, but there's nothing that I've thought of yet.
Cool. Anybody special that will be introduced in the second book, that some other twisted character?
So there is a whole new set of characters in the second book, both from the choir and within her Jane's community in Iceland. They're also in the first book. There's I think it's one sentence where Jane mentions that they have twin teenagers who are back in Reykjavik who aren't there, but those teenagers play a very big role in this next book. So kind of an exploration of adolescence a little bit as well.
Fascinating. What's the one point you would love to leave with the people listening to set the hook and get them to read your book?
Oh my
Those who
goodness.
haven't read it.
Set the hook. Yeah, I always say to people that are interested in writing that you just got to sit down and try doing the writing. But I think for people here who are tuning in because you all have a connection to Iceland, that to me is the hook, is that this is a book that will, I hope, talk about some of the places that you love about Iceland, but also from the perspective of this sort of outsider insider, like many of you who are watching this, right? People who know the country, but also maybe don't live in the country. And I think that's a unique offering for this story, is that it's sort of written with those readers in mind.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I like it. I'm sitting there. I have a personal connection with Vestmannaeyjar. I lived in Hornafjörður in '74, and there were a lot of
Oh yeah,
refugees from Vestmannaeyjar.
sure.
So
Hmm.
I love it. And did you go and spend time on Vespaneer while you were writing the book, just to
I
bring
didn't,
it
yeah,
into?
I've been to the Westlands many times before, so it's part of the reason I wanted to. So I didn't make an extra trip specifically for that. But I was there a couple of times. I did go specifically when I was researching Secrets of the Spracher because the real life mayor of the Westman Islands is one of the women who's interviewed in Secrets of the Spracher, and I think, or even I went there twice with that first book, and by the time I went there the second time, I had the idea that I was going to be setting this book there, and so I just was like looking around to make sure that some of the things I'd remembered were in the right locations, and then I had locals also read the manuscript over first. So not a specific trip, but I did feel like I knew it well enough to write about it.
Nice. If you could sit down and have a glass of wine with another mystery author, what author would you want to sit down and have a glass of wine with?
Ooh. Well, I've been fortunate now that I've met a few real authors and I've got to share glasses of wine with them. And they're just maybe that's something that I think it was Yrsa Sigurðardóttir, the Icelandic author, or Lilja Sigurðardóttir of no relation, who's also an Icelandic author, and they both said to me, the mystery writers are the most fun, and I have to say they are pretty fun so far when I've gone to events and done that. So I don't know. Louise Penny in Canada has been very kind to me since I've met her a few years ago, and I'll be in Knowlton, Quebec, in the Eastern Townships in about 10 days at her festival, the Knowlton Literary Festival. Um, so she is a really fun writer as well. Yeah, there's just lots of people, and I feel really fortunate that I've had the opportunity to meet so many of them.
By the way, you are a real author yourself, just letting you know. Uh, the If you could sit down and have a glass of wine with one of the characters in your book, who would you sit down and have a glass of wine with?
Oh, you've got great questions, Mark, because I'm getting lots of questions I haven't had before. Ooh, hmm. Maybe Jane, although she's a little bit, I think she's fun, but she's also quite kind of cynical. Um, and I wouldn't want her to be a downer. I don't like hanging out with downers, but no, I think she'd be fun. And I quite liked Hannah, the artist character too.
Cool. Well, my last question that I have for you is, so what interview question have you never been asked that you always wished somebody would ask you?
Mhm.
And what's the answer to that question?
That question exactly. I don't have a quick answer for it. I think the thing is that I usually, and you'll have noticed this maybe in the interview, is that when there's something else that I want to say that even if it doesn't directly answer a question, but is sort of tangentially related, then I kind of shoehorn it in there so that I manage to get forward everything that I'm trying to say. So there's nothing on the top of my head that I'm like, why don't people ask this or that? Um, but I will say that you've had quite a few original questions in this event, so that's always refreshing.
Yeah. I do have to actually tap on the shoulder the president of the INLNA. She also created a
Mhm.
bunch of this. She would have been here, but she's in Australia. Her first grandchild was born last night in Australia.
Oh,
So
wow. Well,
just a shout out to
virtual
Glenn.
congratulations.
Yeah. So
Should
I
probably see that.
half
That's
half the
exciting.
question. Yeah, a lot of the great questions have come from her
Mm,
mind. She's a brilliant and a voracious reader and a huge fan of yours. Uh,
thank you.
as am I, by the way.
Thank you.
So I believe that we're coming up on my little schedule. I have a little schedule here, and I'm
Excellent.
coming up to the point where I'm supposed to tag and go towards questions asked by the Q&A panel for the question and answer stuff.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Eliza. This has been just really, really interesting, and Mark, some very good questions. We do have some questions coming in from the audience. Before we go to those, though, I have one question. You said you've always wanted to write a mystery if you were going to write nonfiction. How long did the idea for the book noodle around inside your head before it actually came to paper?
That's a great question because, as you know, there's some people have those ideas kind of rattling around in their brains for decades, right, before they sit down. And I almost like forced myself to come up with an idea because I was at that point, as I mentioned at the beginning, that um, that I knew that I wanted to start writing something or working on another book. And I didn't want to wait, or I'd think I'd never had time. And, it wasn't like I had a light bulb went off and I was like, oh, that's the idea. But the more, but you can't force yourself to have an idea. But the more I did kind of at least kind of give myself the space to think about it, I realized that some of the big things, like set in Iceland, have Canadian characters, connection to diplomacy, or some of these things, were there from the beginning, and so gradually they'd kind of tinker in. It did take me a very long time to write the first draft, I would say, probably a year and a half or 2 years. And the reason for that is, of course, I had so many other things going on as well, and it's hard to prioritize things. And when I wrote the first book, excuse me, uh, with a nonfiction book, as to the nitty gritty of book publishing, you write a book proposal. So you write, a couple pages on what it's going to be, an outline of all the chapters, and a couple chapters, and then you sell that, and then you're contractually obligated to write the darn book. Um, but with fiction, nobody cares what you're doing until you write the whole book out. And so it is sort of hard to motivate yourself then, right? When you have many other draws on your attention and your time. And especially because I hadn't done it before. So I remember thinking, like, I could write this whole thing down and people will just say, oh, thank you very much, but we're not interested. Um, and the only thing that really kept me going in a sense sometimes was thinking, um, it could be that I'll write this whole draft, we'll send it to a million publishers, and nobody will want to publish it. But I know 100% that nobody's going to publish it if I never write it. And so I went with the one that didn't have the 100% odds. But sometimes that motivation was difficult. And so, it's a two-book deal that I'd signed, and so I knew that I would have to write the next one, and that, kind of, I was faster at writing the second one. She says now with the first draft, maybe it's going to take me years to review it, but I feel like I'd learned a little bit more. I had a bit more confidence in what I was doing the second time around.
All right. Well, I'm sure that the sequels are coming a little bit more easily than the first ideas did.
Hmm.
We have a couple of questions, several questions that have come in from the audience. One is from a Ludsmith, who says, loved your book. I've been to Iceland 5 times, to Westmannaeyr 3 times, most recently 4 months ago, where I met you at the Folk Museum in
Yeah.
Hamy's library, when I was at a conference with the Church of the Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
Your characters were relatable and you gave life to the island. Interesting tale and historical facts. Thank you very much. Was the Skell restaurant based on an actual one? You've kind of alluded to this. Cuisine and books are so important to Icelanders.
Well, that's very true, and thank you. And yeah, that was a fun conference that's mentioned, which was also a coincidence because I'm in a book club here in Iceland, which is mostly foreigners who live here, often ambassadors or spouses of ambassadors, and other of us long-term immigrants. And once a year, we go somewhere in Iceland and talk about a book that takes place in that region. And so we decided, of course, to do my book on the Western Islands. And that coincided with this conference where there's a number of people, especially from Utah, because there's a number of Icelanders, especially from the Western Islands, who actually went and settled in Utah a long time ago. Um, and yes, thank you, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the book. And so, yeah, the restaurant scale is quite based on the restaurant Slipperin, uh, that was open on the Western Islands, just in the way that it described the setting and the layout and where it's marked on the map. And as I said, when I stole some of the recipes, there's a cocktail that plays a very crucial role in the book, and that is a made up cocktail. Although a friend of mine who is a mixologist has actually created a recipe for the cocktail later on, so I could describe it in more detail, but it wasn't something that existed. And certainly the chef at the restaurant in my book is nothing like the real life chef in the West Islands, nor is anybody else like anybody else. So.
Okay. You talked about setting the mystery in Iceland with foreign-born
Mhm.
characters. This is a question from David. Are there places in Iceland that have caught your attention in a strong enough way to take on a major role in future writing, either in a mystery or otherwise?
Um, Yeah, I think so. The next book is set in Reykjavik. And again, I thought because it's the capital, and already as I'm starting to tinker and play with little ideas of other settings, there's just so many great areas in Iceland. So I thought, okay, the third book, which is far too nascent to really think about, I would set in somewhere are different again in Iceland. I think there's so many different regions with so many different things going on that I think I would like to do that. But one of the things I tried to showcase a little bit and I maybe see this a lot because I am an immigrant to Iceland, is trying to showcase the increasing diversity in Iceland, which you don't necessarily see reflected in a lot of the media or things that come out of the country. And so that's why I wanted, for instance, I have this chef who just from his name Piotr obviously has some kind of Polish connection to the country. That's our biggest immigrant group in Iceland. And I just think while they're not, plot points in the story, it's just a really interesting opportunity that as fiction writers we have to illustrate sort of more of the diversity in the society, which I think is important.
Okay, very nice. I'm sure this is a question, this is from Julian, that you've
Mhm.
a million times, but if you don't mind answering it again, do you have any tips for keeping up with writing for fun despite an incredibly busy work schedule?
Uh, that's a great question. In my case, the writing is part of my job, so and I guess that's a privilege to be in. So the way that I structure my time, and I think you could ask this question a million times, and you'll get a million different answers, I would think, and that's good because everybody writes in different ways. In my case, I look at it as part of my job, and therefore I kind of weave it into part of my work schedule. I try to look at my working time as, normal working hours, kind of a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday sort of person. If I'm in the mood to write late into the evening or early on a weekend morning or whatever, then I'll do that. But I don't pressure myself to do that if I'm getting things done at the other time. I also write a lot on airplanes because I travel a lot, and I try to be efficient with my time. And if I'm away from my family, I have 4 kids. Then I feel like I like to use that time to get work done, which frees me up to be more with them when I'm at home. Now, it's obviously very different when you have a full-time job and you're coming home and then you have to write, especially something like writing or being creative, because at least for me, I'm most creative early, first thing in the morning, not late in the evening when I can hardly string a sentence together. Um, some people, those people are not me, advocate waking up at 5 in the morning, waking up an hour earlier than you need to wake up and doing those things. And I can see if you manage to do that, how that would be effective. Also psychologically, in the sense that if you like take that extra hour and before you've even started all the things that you have to do that day, you've done all this, I think that's got to give you a real kind of boost for the day in terms of feeling you've accomplished something. Again, I have never done it, managed to do it myself though. I like that extra hour of sleep. Um, Same in even my husband, he is a historian and writer, and he writes all the time in the evenings, and he can manage. I think it's all the strong coffee that Icelanders like to drink, but he can stay up really late at night writing. So the only thing that I would say when the writing is sort of on the side from all of your professional and familiar and other commitments is if you want to prioritize that, um, to try to do that, carve out whatever the time is. If you're a schedule person, carve it out in some kind of a schedule, in the way that you've got to do the laundry or the dishes or your taxes or whatever it is you've got to do. But also in the sense that if you don't commit to it, it doesn't happen, right? It always falls down the wayside. But also to know that sometimes life does get in the way, and that's okay. And one of the things that I feel like we as people tend to do too much of is beat ourselves up and take too much time when we don't manage to accomplish all those things. Like sometimes you think, today I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I only got to three. And if you were efficient and you weren't procrastinating, then it's okay that you didn't get to those other things. So it isn't helpful to think, I should be writing, I should be writing, I should be writing. Oh, I'm just tired, I'm going to watch TV. I should be writing, I should be writing. Just say, tired today, I'm going to watch TV. It's going to give me more energy for tomorrow, and then I can write. But don't waste your time thinking the what if, what if, what if. That's not productive. It's like I, I should like call my dad out because my dad's wonderful. But so my dad really likes cinnamon buns, don't we all? And Sometimes he'll, but they're not super healthy, so he'll try not to eat them. And then he'll get the cinnamon bun. He's like, oh, I really shouldn't have the cinnamon bun. I probably shouldn't eat this. It's not very good for me. I shouldn't. And he's eating the cinnamon bun, as he says it. And I feel like we know that they're not very good for you. But if you're going to eat a cinnamon bun, eat the cinnamon bun, enjoy it, feel good about how you've eaten it, know that you don't have to have more later, but don't waste the whole experience by feeling awful that you're eating the cinnamon bun. Then you don't even get the joy out of eating the cinnamon bun. So somehow portray that to writing.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you. I think I think your dad and I would uh, get along pretty well. Julie says, thanks so much for the detailed answer.
Okay, great. Well, good luck, Julian.
We have a question from Aurora. Have you ever thought about writing a children's book? And if so, do you know what it would be about?
Um, I guess the short answer is no. I haven't really, even though I've read a million to my kids. Um, so no, and therefore I can't really say what it would be about. But again, who knows what will happen in life? So far, no, but we'll see.
Okay. And then we have a question from Rob that
Mhm.
says, which authors and genres do you like to read for pleasure? Or do you have
Um, I
time to read for pleasure?
I read a lot. I tend to have one written book on the go and one that I'm listening to. I got really into audiobooks during the pandemic, and they tend to be kind of different. The audiobooks tend to be nonfiction books. I love current affairs, memoir, books that teach me about something, a different area or interest that I don't know. Uh, so right now, audio wise, so there, there's not necessarily authors that I seek out, but lots of things. Right now, audio wise, I'm listening to, oh my gosh, I just started it last night, a book about I can't remember the author's name, which is also awful. Sonia Purnell, who it's the third book I've written by her. She wrote a biography of Clementine Churchill. She also wrote a really fascinating biography about a woman. Now I'm also forgetting her name, who was married to Randolph Churchill, a British upper class woman. She divorced him and she became like a spy in the Second World War and then ended up moving to the States and lasted so long that she became ambassador to France under the Clinton administration. So she actually, became an American citizen, even though being born in Britain. And she wrote a book, the same author, Sonia Purnell, about an American spy in the Second World War in France. So I've read it, I'm listening to it because I like the other ones. I'm reading The Fish Can Sing by Haldor Laxness right now because my book club is doing it here in Iceland on the weekend in 3 days, and I just started it, so we'll see how that goes. And another book by a Turkish British author called Elif Shafak. I should see if I can type that into the chat. I know her a little bit. Let's see if you can see that. I know her a little bit. I hadn't really read her books, and she gave me her latest book called There Are Rivers in the Sky, which I absolutely loved fiction. And so I went out and bought another book of hers. But I have a bookshelf over here with like 4 shelves of books that I haven't read. I was at a book festival in Cape Breton on the weekend. I bought 4 books by authors that I met there. So lots of different things. I like mystery, I like current affairs, I like memoir, and then I pick up other things, as and when. I probably don't read enough poetry. Lots of people say that's good for you. I don't really ever read poetry, but I do read a lot. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, and we have a question. Well, it's not a
Mhm.
question. We have a comment
Okay.
from
Okay.
Julie Ingebrigtsen saying this is not a question, but mystery is my favorite genre. So looking forward to reading the book soon. Loved Secrets of the Spraker. Keep them coming. Also love the painting behind Mark. There you go, Mark.
Yeah,
Hey, shout out to
it's a
Mark.
it's a painting done in 1965 by an Icelandic artist Matthias, and it's Thingvellir, and it was presented to my grandfather by the artist. There you go.
That's a
And
great
it's
story.
actually it's actually like 3 feet by or 4 feet by 3 feet. It's a big painting. It's right there. This is like a picture of it. It's
Yeah.
right there. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, that's cool. So you have a picture of it and then you put it behind you. That's also cool.
Yes. Yeah. I could actually have the picture sitting there, but that would be awkward.
Right, fair. Hmm.
All right.
Well, thank you to, was it Ingibjörg? Or I'm looking it up here,
Yeah,
Julie Ingibjörg,
Julie Ingebrigtsen.
um, for that. I'm glad you enjoyed the first book and hope you like the mystery and hope you like the next books.
Yeah, well, and that is all the questions we have so far from the audience.
Okay.
But before we move on, as stated in the introduction, you are one of the co-founders of the Iceland Writers Retreat. And you
Mhm.
want to say a couple words about that? I know the next session is in April. Uh,
Yeah, I'd be happy to. As you said, it's the Iceland Writers Retreat, and it's an event that my friend Erica Jacobs Green and I founded. We had our first event in 2014. So now we're going to go for, I think, the 12th time next year in April. And it's an event in Iceland, in Reykjavik, which is the UNESCO City of Literature, for anyone who likes to write. So I think that's one of the things I always want to emphasize is that you don't have to apply to get in or audition or have published something. You just have to enjoy writing in whatever capacity you want. We invite 10 to 12 authors from around the world to lead small group writing workshops on the craft of writing. So, for instance, next year we have Susan Choi coming. She's been shortlisted for this year's Booker Prize. Evan Osnos, who is a writer, nonfiction writer with the New Yorker. Canadians might know Jessie Thistle, who wrote From the Ashes, which was the best-selling memoir in Canada a couple of years ago, and Anne Marie MacDonald, who's been around, novelist, been around for a long time. We also have Camilla Shamsi from the UK. We always have an Icelandic author. So Erica and I each teach a workshop as well. People come and they can choose the workshops that they want to attend. They're small group workshops. And then we have these day tours that are included that introduce people to Iceland's literary heritage. So they're led by a writer. We have a pub night with local music and reading. So it's also a really good way to get to know Icelandic literature. As I said, it's in April every year. You can go to IcelandWritersRetreat.com for all the information. We're really friendly and welcoming. For anybody, Iceland is not the most affordable of destinations, as all of you will know from there. For anybody who might need financial support, we do offer very few scholarships, very competitive scholarships, but our window for that is actually open right now until the middle of October. So if anybody is interested in going, but doesn't think that they could afford the registration fee, then I would encourage them to take a look at our scholarships, which I'm really honored to say are funded by our alumni. So I think it always says such a good thing about the experience that people have that then they want to share and support other people to have that experience.
all right. Well,
You know what? Actually, I'm going to give you a bonus here, and because I started it, I'm allowed to do that. So for those of you who are I feel the power. For those of you who are watching, if you do want to go to next April's event, I can offer you a 10% friends and family discount. And so when you would go to pay the deposit, you can put in the comments that you heard about this through this webinar, and then we apply the 10% discount after when you go. That feels so
Nice.
cool to say that. And this is the first year we've been able to do this. And so I always forget to mention it, but I'm mentioning it now.
all
Nice.
right. Having the power. Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. All right. Well, this has been just marvelous, Eliza. Thank you so much. And before we wrap up, then we'll just take a few minutes to talk about what's coming up on the various calendars. So, Mark, do you want to tell us about what's on the INLNA list of events?
Yes, I will. Uh, it was hard to say the INLNA, but imagine if you were to say the Þjóðræknisfélag Íslendingar í Vesturheimi.
Hmm.
I don't know. Took me a
Mjög
long time
gott.
to
Yeah.
took me a long time to learn how to say that. I practiced it just so I could say it in front of Doug in Reykjavik a couple of weeks ago. Uh, the INLNA will be hosting another INLNA Reads event next month. The timing and details I haven't got handy, but they will be announced shortly for those who follow the INLNA Reads. I believe the next book is by Brian Borgford of Calgary. On as well as that, the seasons are changing. We're heading in towards fall, and a lot of the local clubs uh, and local member clubs of the INLNA are going to be hosting a bunch of events like fall feasts and Vina Terta Bees. I would encourage anybody to reach out to their local club. The list of the clubs and the links to the clubs are all on the INLNA webpage. Uh, Go there and find out what's happening in your backyard. There will be things happening. A couple of there's too many events to detail here. A couple of short examples are this coming weekend in Winnipeg. They're having a Icelandic Winnipeg tour. It's Stefan's Winnipeg tour that he's upgraded in honor of the 150th. And so he's going to be hosting or leading that tour. I think tickets might already be all sold out, but you can check with the Winnipeg club. Also, both the Winnipeg and Calgary clubs are going to be screening The Day Iceland Stood Still on Saturday, October 25th. That's going to be a blast.
Amazing film. Yeah.
Yes. So both personally and on behalf of the INLNA, thank you, Eliza. It's I'm sure that we will be hearing more from you, and we'll probably see you right on here again in the near future for your next book.
Mhm. Thank
Notice
you. And can I add
near future.
Can I add one little thing that you reminded me
Yes.
there when you're saying, well, to wish the Canadians happy Thanksgiving. But, I was often asked after I was First Lady, what I took away from it. And this sounds like a cliche, but I said that it made me more of an optimist because I had this incredible opportunity to travel around Iceland, travel around the world, and meet people who are doing amazing things. And I say that now, which may seem like a non sequitur, but as you're telling me, here you are listing all of these activities that are taking place around North America throughout the fall. And you're not doing that to get rich and buy yourselves a Mercedes. You're doing it because you want to continue the friendship between these two countries. And it's been such an incredible honor for me to meet people like all of you who put so much time and effort into nurturing those ties. And I just wanted to thank you for all of that because it's a lot of work, I know. And I know that a lot of you listening know that too, and are probably involved in your own communities and so many other different things. And it really, really makes such a difference. And so I wanted to thank you all for that.
Thank you. My
Uh,
next time I come to Iceland, I want to sit down with my new favorite author and have a glass of wine and chit chat about things like that.
I like wine.
The I do want to wish all the Canadians watching very happy Thanksgiving weekend. May your turkey come out tender, uh, as well as very important, go Jays go uh, for the. Not that I'm anti-New York, but I hope New York stumbles. Uh, and I think that's it for me. I really, really want to thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity. Take it away, Diane.
All right. Well, the INLUS also has a pretty busy schedule lined up for the fall. Our next INLUS webinar will be on Monday, November 17th, and will feature Aaron Kennedy, who is an avid biker and has cycled across Iceland through the Highlands and is planning another trip in 2026, this next year across Iceland. The last I heard, he plans on starting in the east and finishing up in the West Fjords in time for the solar eclipse. And he's going to share his tips on how to plan a trip like that, what gear it takes, how to get your bike to and from Iceland, what resources are available to you, etc., etc. He's also going to have plenty of photos from his trips to share with us. So that again, that'll be November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And for those of you in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, the movie The Day Iceland Stood Still will be shown at St. Catherine's University O'Shaughnessy Theater on October 24th, and will include a panel discussion following the film that will include Pamela Hogan and Hrappnhildur Gunnarsdottir. And information regarding ticketing for that can be found at stkate.edu, so stkate.edu. One last thing is that, it's time to start planning for your 2026 Snorri and Snorri Plus educational trips. The Snorri dates for those who are 20 to 30 years of age are tentatively scheduled for June 13th through July 20th. Registration opens in October and closes on January 19th. The Snorri Plus dates for those over 30 years of age are tentatively scheduled for August 13th through the 31st. And again, registration for that will open in October. And early bird registration will close on January 19th as well. More information can be found regarding these programs and other Snorri opportunities at snorri.is. That's SNORRI.is. And thank you again, Mark, Eliza, Doug, for your time today. This has been a wonderful webinar. And thank you to our attendees for being part of today and spending some time with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Tack för det.
Tack för det.